All right, our final panel discussion is how to solve the attainable housing crisis. We've sort of walked up to the doorstep. Now let's see if we can close the loop on this. I'm going to introduce some panel members here. Chief Innovation Officer of United Wholesale Mortgage is Lee Jelenic. And he's UAW, he is the head of Digital Innovation, Government Affairs, Investor Relations, responsible for ensuring UWM's products and services remain best in class. Prior to that, he came here from Ford Motor Company. Most recently, he is the CEO of Ford Commercial Solutions, a global business unit within Ford Smart Mobility, delivered vehicle data analytics and fleet management services to commercial customers. Also served as the Vice President of Marketing for the Ford Motor Credit Company, where he led the global marketing, fintech data services, and new business with that. Also was in the automotive news 40 under 40. So welcome, Lee. Thank you. And we can stick in the automotive arena. Jill Ferrari, if you're here, come on up. She is the managing partner, Renovare Development. Passionate advocate for women in commercial real estate. Jill's background includes private real estate acquisition, development, community development, legal practice, and consulting. She's an attorney, obviously. President and CEO of the Michigan Manufactured Housing Association is John D. Lindley. And as president and CEO of the association, John implements the Board of Directors' strategic direction, oversees legislative advocacy, as well as managing staffs, membership, events, association operations, member of the Michigan Society of Association Executives, and a graduated and credential holder of the Institute of Organizational Management. John D. Lindley, welcome. Thank you. And finally, we've heard from her this morning, but we'll bring back up Monique Guerrero, the Chief Financial Officer and Deputy Manager of the Oakland County Neighborhood and Housing Development Division. Welcome. Okay. All right, well, let's go ladies first. And since we've not heard from Jill, why don't we give you the option of taking and seeing if you can distill what we've all learned today and sort of lead us in a direction of a solution for the housing, the affordability problem.
As much as I would love to do the first part of that, I didn't get here till 1 o'clock, so I'm going to be honest. Because I was actually in underwriting for our transformational brownfield project that includes affordable housing. So I'm sorry that I missed some of the panels, but I can tell you what we are focusing on as a commercial real estate development company. There's a lot of money coming down through federal programs such as ARPA and the Inflation Reduction Act and all kinds of other sources. And where we really think this should be focused is creative mechanisms to free up the private market. I'll give you an example. InvestUP, which is a large economic development group in the Upper Peninsula, is promoting the use of ARPA funds to create a cash collateral pool so that private lenders in the Upper Peninsula can enter markets where their risk analysis or risk tolerance wouldn't allow them to lend. They're also creating an infrastructure pool to make bond payments for municipal bonds on infrastructure for new subdivisions. So instead of, and don't get me wrong, direct grants and loans for our projects is phenomenal. Love that assistance on our deals, but I really think in order to start solving this crisis, we have to figure out a way to activate the private market, both the lenders and employers. The employee housing tax credit in the form of a Senate bill died last year. We need a incentive for employers to invest in housing outside of the benefits of direct investment. And so we really need to be thinking about further incentivization through corporate tax credits and other benefits so that we can really engage the employment, the corporate community of Michigan in developing attainable housing.
Okay. Let's go to you, John. In terms of what you're hearing and seeing, I mean, it sounds to me like we're almost trying to clean sheet this thing because it's gotten that far out of whack.
First, let me apologize to everybody. I've never seen my face that big before, and that's just unfortunate for everybody who has to look at that. You know, not to be cliche or to oversimplify it, the issue, but we have to have an all of the above solution to the problems that are going on right now. The supply and affordability issues that we have throughout the state, rural, suburban, urban areas are not going to be solved with any one product or any one tax credit or any one, right? We have to have an all of the above solution. That's what, very frankly, I'm focused on. My organization is focused on trying to, and I'll be frank, not making a lot of friends along the way, because I'm throwing some elbows in some places where people don't appreciate some spotlights being called attention to. We talked earlier today about some of Mishta's programs. We talked about NIMBYism at the local level, and a lot of that, from our perspective, comes in the form of, we need housing, we need more housing, we need affordable housing, but I'm sorry, we didn't mean that kind of housing. And that's never going to get us to a place where we're solving this problem.
Okay, Monique?
Yes, in order to solve what it is that we're finding is the crisis, I would echo what we've discussed so far, in that it is a multifaceted and partnership effort that needs to occur. So on a more micro level, when we get a proposal and or looking at homebuyer subsidy, it truly is looking at to what extent there's leverage funding, whether that's for the project itself, so looking at the cost of construction and making sure the gaps are filled there, but also for the buyer as well. So we know that there are disparities that need to be addressed in terms of homebuyer qualification. So not just down payment assistance, but making sure that closing cost, down payment assistance, and overall knowledge of what that transaction is, and really educating the buyer, making sure that all these angles are being hit, is not going to be done by any one entity. So really making sure that we're diving into those conversations and holding each other accountable to making sure that success is achieved in the end. So again, it's not anybody, any one person's effort. It's got to be a team. Okay,
Lee, you guys, the largest mortgage lender in the country, they're calling for change. Is United Wholesale Mortgage looking at change? How are you changing? What are you looking at in terms of trying to make a difference in this space?
It's a great question, and I appreciate it. And I think I want to start by saying, John, I think your face looks great there. It doesn't look too large to me. It's right sized. It's perfect. I really appreciate the answer that my panelist just gave. I think before I answer your question directly, this is it is a multifaceted problem. There's downstream and there's upstream, and to me, you can get lost in the headlines sometimes of national economic numbers, because the big numbers do say that we have a supply issue, we have a pricing issue, rates are high, there's certain things that are out of our control. But really, the quickest way we're going to solve this is on the local level, and with local programs and with partnership between public and private. But I would even say, I can speak to, and I will speak to, the question on what are we doing nationally and what is UWM doing to make access to affordability more widespread. But I would say we've also got a unique perspective because we're here in Pontiac. We have 6,000 people that come to work every day here in Pontiac. And I've lived in a lot of different places in Michigan. I've lived downtown Detroit. I've lived in Flint. I come to work every day in Pontiac. I've spent a lot of time in Dearborn. So these are all areas that have housing supply and affordability challenges. You need demand and you need supply. And a place like Pontiac, it's starting to recover, but until the schools are better, until there's more jobs here, there just won't be the demand to live here. And so then the risk is creating artificial supply at a public cost that no one will want. So this is like an end-to-end solution that we all have, or an end-to-end problem that we all have a role in finding a solution for. I can tell you that of our 6,000 plus people here, there are hundreds of people that call Pontiac home. And without a doubt, if we weren't here, if we didn't choose to move our headquarters here from Troy, those hundreds of people wouldn't live in Pontiac. And so I loved the headline that I saw that Oakland County is trying to, is doing some work now to, bring 400 to 600 employees to some buildings that are vacant in Pontiac. And it's those kinds of decisions, and that's going to certainly be a public-private partnership there that will help this along. I would say on a national level, we are in the business of wholesale lending, And so our clients are exclusively independent mortgage brokers. And the definition of a broker is someone who is going to give people options. So government data shows that when a borrower gets a loan through a mortgage broker, that loan will save them on average $9,400 compared to if they got that loan directly from a lender or through a bank. The reason is it's sort of two parts. It's closing costs and it's rate. And so I think step one nationally, we're trying to grow the broker channel because we know that it saves borrowers money. When you look at minorities, that number jumps from $9,400 to $10,400. The answer is pretty simple. Brokers are local. Brokers are going to find the borrowers the best option. Brokers understand and know their community, and brokers work on relationships and on referrals. They don't work on billion-dollar marketing budgets. Neither do we as a lender. We don't spend $1 billion a year marketing. We don't spend hardly any money marketing. And so some of it is just education and financial literacy. And for those that are, I mean, my answer is pretty specific right now to someone who's ready to enter the housing market and ready to not be a renter anymore, ready to get that mortgage. But even at that step, making an informed decision can be the difference between, $9,000, $10,000, $11,000 in rate and closing costs, at the close and over the life of the loan. So I know we got more to discuss, but that's my perspective.
Well, then here's my question. I work in the news business. We hear about affordable housing when, say, Mayor Mike Duggan makes an announcement and they have affordable housing. I do not, in any place that I travel, hear from people that they believe that affordable housing is a crisis. And I'm just saying that as in the public realm, because that's where I spend my time. I don't hear people outside of industries like this talking about it. So how do we go about the business of alerting the average person that this is a problem, it's a genuine problem, and needs to be addressed on a rather large scale? So Monique, why don't you start and help me with how do you get this word out and get some sort of critical mass to get people to understand that this has to be worked on?
Well, I think the message can vary depending on who it is that you're speaking to. As we just heard a wonderful presentation that was really in a little bit more of almost the academic space, should I say, where there's really hitting home a lot of the statistics and numbers and facts and things like that. And for some of us that works very well. That was an amazing presentation. Can't say enough about it. But sometimes there are areas and rooms that you're in where you have to more describe the impact. And so with mixed income communities, mixed use and kind of buy some entertainment spaces and amenities and things like that. What is the impact on children? So what do we see in the growth and the improvement in the lives of Black and brown children? And so what does that look like? Well, everybody has children, or it seems like nowadays, in the things that we're navigating, or if they don't, who doesn't care about children, right? So it's kind of like really just bringing it at home and speaking to people and meeting them where they're at to really convey the message. And overall, really what it is how can housing and how can the improvement in health affect everybody in terms of the quality of their life? And surely, wherever you're sitting, you are interested in it, can at least relate to mechanisms that improve the quality of life.
John, go ahead.
Well, I think that there's a cause and effect here. There's a causation that has to be discussed with everybody in the local economy, so to speak. So if you look across the state, again, whether it's rural, urban, or suburban, people talk about community building and what they want. They want restaurants, they want retail, they want cultural activities, they want all of those things, again, or access to them, in close by neighborhoods. But there's resorts in northern Michigan that aren't opening their restaurants because they don't have, you can't live in that area as a dishwasher or and I'm just using that as an example. So we have to talk about the cause and effect. Why are those restaurants not opening? Why is that retail, not taking ground in the downtown that we want to be so popular? Because there's no place for anybody to live, right? And those dots aren't being connected to the people that are making the decisions on the local level relative to things like zoning, incentives, and otherwise. They've got to see the connection there.
Hey, Jill, your thoughts?
So Renovare has projects all over the state of Michigan. We have 3 in the Upper Peninsula: Benton Harbor, Harper Woods, Ypsilanti. We have a partnership with Robertson Brothers. And across the state of Michigan, We are hearing from economic development directors and employers that they are choosing not to expand, even though they are in a financial position to do so, because they cannot attract the workforce because of the lack of housing. We're hearing this from Bad Axe. We're hearing it from Iron Mountain. We're hearing it from, just communities all over the state of Michigan. For our project near Pictured Rocks, we received a letter from the local paper company that they had turned down 200 candidates because there was nowhere for them to live for open positions. So I think that there is a rumbling of impact in the corporate community for lack of housing. It may not be felt here, but I can tell you it is happening across the state of Michigan, and I think those voices need to be elevated and activated, and I think that those voices need to help in the campaign to raise awareness in local units of government. We have so many communities who hear the word low-income tax credit housing or affordable housing, and they immediately shut their doors. They shut down projects. So, this awareness needs to be built that you have a workforce, you have a community that sits at this income level, and it is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. This is your workforce, this is your community. Let's figure out how to build housing for everyone in your community. And I think that's a data exercise. It is an awareness exercise. But I really do think that all the players, corporate community, government, private developers, and nonprofit community, all have to be involved in that awareness campaign.
Lee, you must be seeing this across the country. You must be understanding these issues.
100%. And I think, again, echoing my panelists, it is such a multifaceted issue. I mean, I think to start at the question you asked, sometimes why don't we generally hear in the media, in the news, as much about the housing crisis? I do think it's because those that are suffering the worst in the housing crisis sometimes have the least voice. And they've maybe got other things that they're even more worried about than where to live. But some of the factors that we just talked about, and I'll give some examples of some things that some zip codes have done and some counties have done that are helping to alleviate this. But it is very taxing on your life if you can't live where you work. If your place of employment is hours away, it's really hard, because the thing we all have is the same 24 hours in a day. And for those that have to spend so much time getting to their job because they can't afford to live remotely close to it, that's when bad things start to happen. And it might be the restaurants at a resort. It might be worse. It might be nurses at a hospital in LA County, or teachers can't even live within an hour of the school they're teaching at in Dade County. So these are real problems, and they're different. They're different problems than the ones we just talked about in a place like Pontiac that has some infrastructure but needs commitment from local government, county government, state government, and the local businesses. Some of the things I've seen that have been proactively trying to fix this, I think both LA County and Dade County, and more broadly California and Florida, so two very different states with very different political leadership, and in some ways very different issues, have had some solutions that are very similar. So if I say the term accessory dwelling unit, what I mean by that is a detached garage that can be converted into a studio apartment, kitchen, bathroom, bedroom. And that does a couple things. That increases the value for the homeowner, first of all, because now you're using your detached garage differently, and it's not for everyone because now you're sharing space very close. But really what it does is it adds supply, and LA County is one that's been really behind this, and so is Dade County. It adds really affordable housing supply for those entry-level jobs, for those medical school, medical residents that are hardly making any money, but they're working at the hospital. They need somewhere to live. They're working long hours, the teachers that teach in the public school. And so what these counties have done, and to some degree with support of the state, is they've made it so that there's no zoning issues. You can go get a home equity line of credit. You can go refinance your home and take cash out and do the renovation and create the accessory dwelling unit and convert your detached garage into a single, scared me too, into a single, into a studio apartment that now adds affordable supply, increases the value of your property, gives you some rental income. So there are some things out there that we're seeing that are, and it's it's working. I mean, it is creating some supply, and it is adding. And of course, you also see some of this explode in big Airbnb areas too. I mean, look around Orlando, and you're seeing this a lot as well, and that's for a totally different reason. But the core of it, LA County, Dade County, these very expensive places to live, there's solutions out there.
Is it, and since we're here in Pontiac, and you're talking hyper-local, are there things that Pontiac can do easily or quickly to deal with this?
I think so. I mean, Pontiac needs help. Pontiac needs help from us, from the businesses. Pontiac needs help from the county, and Pontiac needs help from the state. And the reason for that is because, I mean, I love the current administration, and we talk a lot, but Pontiac has been in some form of a decline for a long time that dates way back to before any of us in the room really had any control. And so many jobs have left Pontiac, and there's been decisions that have been made or not made that have put Pontiac in a rough situation. So there are things that can be done, but it doesn't just rest on the mayor's office, or it doesn't just rest on our county government. I mean, we've got wonderful leaders in both places willing to try to do the right thing. They need partnerships, and I'll go back to it, like a place like Pontiac. The school system needs investment. People with young kids want to be able to come here and not be afraid to send their kids to the public school. Like that's a real problem. And the housing situation isn't going to get that much better until Pontiac schools get better. It's just the facts. And if people don't want to hear it, that's so in a place like Pontiac, it's not that different than Flint. I spent a few years living in Flint as well, and so those are things that need to get fixed. The other area where we generally need help is infrastructure. And I think we're going to get it, but there's a bridge closed right down the road from here with, right now as we all sit, zero plan to fix it. And it is a main artery to get in and out of Pontiac, and it's a main artery to get to a hospital. And we're working on it, and we're working with the state. But the point is, when these things just fail, it has ripples through the community, and something like housing that is already in a tough state really is behind the eight ball. So it takes partners, and again, we're working on the bridge, we're working on other things, but Pontiac can't do it alone. Pontiac needs our help.
Sure, Pontiac needs a lot of help. Monique, you're closest to this. Tell us what Pontiac needs and can do.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the last part of your question?
You're closest to it. So what does Pontiac need, and what does Pontiac do to cope with this and the other myriad issues that are there? I mean, is there something that can be done on an immediate level?
You know what? My mind is kind of going back as I'm absorbing all of the input here. My mind is going back to the redlining maps and the historical kind of timeline and the occurrences that Pontiac as a city and cities like it, what they've gone through in the past. And what's interesting is that when we think back to those maps, right, and the designated areas of disinvestment and kind of the warnings that were labeled Pontiac as an area to kind of stay away from, the verbiage that I saw on there was a little bit more nicely put, to be quite honest with you. I think they labeled maybe Pontiac in certain areas risky or risky. There was something about lack of harmonious community members, but there are quite a few more, for anybody who's read up on it, quite a few more vile verbs and adjectives and all of the sorts of things that were attributed to the people living in certain areas. And so those things have been perpetuated, right, generation over this, and it's honestly quite not that long ago, right? So what we're dealing with is, as the young lady presented, is that we're dealing with the aftermath of that, but it's still very prevalent here. And so it's going to take, I think, a unified voice, right, and singing the praises of the potential of certain areas and the human capital that is here, and really pushing forth the right message and rewriting those narratives to overcome those misconceptions and those poor connotations of whether it's area driven or associated and attributed to certain kinds of people. It's really, really, really going to take a lot of effort in kind of reconfiguring people's minds around what low-income people are, what who, what, when, where, and why, and what are all the reasons that contribute to people being scared of those kinds of developments in their community, and quite frankly, scared of the people that live in the developments that exist within their community. That's really the problem. And again, it started in the 1930s, but we're still dealing with it now, and it's going to take a lot of really courageous leaders to lift up those voices and really sing the praises of the leaders that do exist that might look a little bit different than the people that they're used to sitting across the table from, and that's okay.
John, thoughts for Pontiac? Sorry, didn't mean to.
So this is a little bit of a soapbox moment, so forgive me for this, but not on this particular trip, but one of the last times I drove down from Lansing to this area, I took 59 all the way across, and I drove right through downtown Pontiac, and I saw on the left side of the road, and I can't remember exactly where I was, forgive me, but there was appeared to be an old abandoned school building, boarded up, some spray paint, some art. And I've used this example before. I've used it with Andy Shore, the mayor of Lansing. I've used it with others as well. If I, as a developer, came to the city of Pontiac right now, Oakland County, Mishta, and others, and said, you know what, I'm going to buy that, and I'm going to put 50 multifamily housing units in that. I'm going to invest $10 million, new infrastructure, new water, new sewer, new electric, all the above. You'd bronze a statue for me in front of that building if I did that. There would be, you know, ribbon cutting and champagne flowing and red carpets and incentives, and it would be, how can we get government to help you? How can we get out of your way? How can we do all of those things? If I came to the city of Pontiac, Oakland County, in the state of Michigan with that same level of interest in an old manufactured housing community, an old quote-unquote trailer park that needs, because there are 1,100 manufactured housing communities in the state of Michigan. And I will not sit here and tell you that they're all beautiful and they're all wonderful, because they're not. A lot of them were developed a long time ago, and a lot of them need help. But if I came with that same, I want to invest, I want to redo the roads, I want to redo the power, the sewer, the water, all the above, start moving in new homes, new manufactured homes into that, and offer 50 to 75 home ownership opportunities to people, I'd be $10 million into litigation before I'd have a shovel in the ground, instead of being helped with my partners in local government, state government, and otherwise. Why?
Do you know?
No, I do not know why. That's I'm not trying to be rhetorical or argumentative. I'm saying this is what we have to talk about here. Housing comes in a lot of different ways and shapes and forms for a lot of different people. And if we're going to have programs that whether it's incentivize or aid or however you want to phrase it, development to try affect the supply side of these equations, then it needs to be an all of the above solution. It comes in a lot of different ways, shapes, and forms.
Well, and we're seeing that it's sort of overarching a theme in virtual of people's lives, their entire lives, is in this one problem, and it all sort of loops back around. So, Jill, what do you think?
So I agree that this answer is broad, but as a developer, from my perspective, the answer to this is the city embracing the toolbox, expanding the toolbox, pushing the boundaries of the toolbox. I think the other critical thing is making sure that staff and administration are in lockstep. When Mayor Duggan came in, and the first things that he really did was really strengthen the connection between administration and city council, making sure that they were more on the same page than they were 20 years ago. It was a huge important step for the city of Detroit. And I think as a developer, I'll give you an example. We're working in the city of Ypsilanti right now on 46 for-sale homes. In the last presentation, she presented a project where the cost to develop was $270,000 a unit, and the sales price was $170,000. That's a $100,000 gap on each unit, and we are facing that pretty much in every community we're working in, especially Ypsilanti. The city staff has become a champion for that project, has pushed the boundary of tools like the Brownfield Redevelopment Financing Act, the use of ARPA through Washtenaw County, just really pushing to use every available tool to make sure we can target those housing units to folks between 40% AMI and 80% AMI in the city of Ypsilanti. What we don't want as developers is to work really hard with staff on pushing things and getting things to the finish line, only to be stopped by council who has a different opinion on what's needed for the city and what should be supported in the city. So I think having a cohesive approach across the board between administration and the city council is important, and just really figuring out exactly what those tools are and trying to push as much as possible and not creating barriers to housing.
Okay. Why don't we open it up for questions? I have to imagine that somebody is no questions. Come on up to the microphone. We got one over here. Go ahead.
My question was for John. He's leaving. Okay. Well, I was going to say, when you look at like the USDA loan, the 502 and the 504, I think it is, which is no down payment and there's no ceiling. But then you look at where they're at, they're outside of the black and brown communities. And then when you come inside of those communities, there's a whole different level of stipulation. And again, when you're looking at the creative housing with manufacturing, and I can go into, because I own property in Lake County as well, but I can go into Lake County and I can use my land as a land loan to build for manufacturer prefab or the other creative type of housing. But when I come into the jurisdiction of the black and brown community, these opportunities are not afforded. So when you're saying, I know we want to say that the redlining is outdated, but however, we have a lot of the institutionalized racism that still is into play, and it creates these type of housing crises that we are saying we want to solve, but we're strategically putting a lot of these programs that are for low income outside of black and brown communities. So I wanted to know, how can we work together to ensure that those type of programs are also afforded to the communities that are suffering? I mean, fortunately, I live in West Bloomfield, and I have property in Grosse Hill, but when I look at people who look like me, they're not afforded those same opportunities.
And anybody?
I guess I can start. I think we probably all have something to say. But yeah, that's a beautifully articulated question, because it does go back to, I mean, Monique has made the point too, where we're dealing with the fallout of something that started decades ago in the 30s and 40s in some of these hardest hit areas. And so over time, the policies and the guidelines, and whether it's USDA or VA programs, which are very specific and generally not going to be what helps solve this problem, or if you look at FHA, there are programs, and there's down payment assistance programs. Almost every state has a state-based down payment assistance program, but as with most things, there are just areas that don't qualify, or there are red tape. It's some of these state-based down payment assistance programs, not necessarily Michigan's, but some of these other states are very difficult. They're difficult to underwrite. They're difficult products to offer. There's a lot of hoops to jump through. Some of them actually don't even allow mortgage brokers to offer these programs, which again I think is eliminating a huge set of mortgage brokers are the ones that really understand their communities they're in. They're the ones that can really be the most helpful to someone maybe buying that first time home. And so then what happens is you have people that aren't able to get across that threshold and become a homeowner and begin paying a mortgage and begin building a credit, and they end up continuing to pay rent and not building equity, and it becomes this cycle. So I think, again, shining a light on which programs maybe look like they might be able to help the communities you referenced, and are there red tape, or why aren't there more? Is there a 1% down program? Is there should there be better down payment assistance specifically targeted at zip codes with less red tape? Should there be some grants for rehabilitation? I know one of the other problems we see, and this is a big one, that the existing housing supply in some of these hardest hit areas, they're in need of repair. So there might be a program to get a family into the home, but then the family's left with plumbing that doesn't work, or electrical that doesn't work, or their heating goes out every time the temperature drops. So it's almost like we need this full solution of we need to get people into these homes, but then they need to have access to make the homes livable, and and that'll become a virtuous circle that if you can do one neighborhood, then another neighborhood, and then if you have some jobs, and then if you have a better school district, it all plays a part.
Go ahead.
I think there are some broader system changes that need to take place. I will say, from a developer's perspective, the relationship with the mortgage lenders for a home sale product has to be developed before the project gets through any entitlement. That has to be one of the first relationships you make. So in Ypsilanti, two of our partners that came to the table in the very beginning are Huntington Bank and University Bank of Ann Arbor. They have both developed special portfolio products for the residents that we are trying to attract to the development. Again, 40% AMI to 80% AMI. These are challenged income levels. They have developed special portfolio loans for these residents and also a down payment assistance program. So I think part of this answer is getting the development community and the mortgage lending community better connected at the beginning of for sale projects to make sure that those products are readily available when those products are ready for market, and it's less of a mystery. I think this is part of the answer.
John, I know you did step out, but this was a question for you.
So I've made a living off of vulnerability and self-deprecation over a period of 20 years. So everybody can have a laugh at my expense. There are certain medical conditions that don't say, you know what, John, you're serving on a panel, so we won't bother you right now. They just kind of hit you when they hit you, and I apologize for that fact. What's the question?
When you're doing the manufacturing homes, right, and you're using the land for your loan-based land, and do you also, is the Manufacturing Association also affiliated with container homes, the quasi-huts, or other creative housing opportunities when we're looking at valuation?
So our members at the Michigan Manufactured Housing Association are the entire supply chain of manufactured and modular homes, from the companies that build and manufacture both the HUD regulated manufactured homes and the modular homes, the companies that transport and install, service the homes, and then the community owners throughout the state of Michigan. So our current members do not include some of the container homes and some of those other things, but we do have some that are getting creative in some of those different spaces. Correct.
So do you do prefab?
Yes.
You do prefab and manufacturing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Monique, any thoughts?
Yeah, we kind of talked about basically removing barriers to opportunity, and as you mentioned, Black and Brown communities, and kind of what does your opportunity look like depending on where you are. Just wanted to reiterate that for the housing department, we spoke to certain things in the presentation, right? High concentrated areas of poverty, areas of opportunity, things of that nature. But I just want to make it clear that we don't want to, on the home buyer side and on the project proposal side, we would never leave anybody behind, right? So while we have certain goals, if we received a proposal where there's an area of high need, low affordable housing options, we're not going to say, oh, no, because you're not West and Bloomfield, that's not our top priority need, you're not going to get anything, sort of thing. We want to be able to contribute to the need in the space of housing wherever it exists, and then kind of see where that falls in terms of our spectrum of many mission-driven priorities and goals of ours. So that's, I will preface what I have to say with that. But what I would say is we're also looking at our policies and procedures and kind of weeding through these things, right? Because we manage federal funds, what are the things that we're statutorily obligated to adhere to? But then what are some things that just we've always done, and our predecessors were in our department for 20, 30 years, and at some point somebody said this is what we should do, and then that's what we followed. But really it's maybe not really even a HUD thing to begin with. So we're constantly going through that to make sure that we're not creating barriers unnecessarily. So I will have you all know that as well. And so one of the examples of that would be there are many, but one of those would be, somebody has applied for the HIP program. They need more funding. So we have to be careful in these things. We don't want to be so lax with it that they can just apply continuously because the need is so great. We're compassionate to the need that is so great, but if we're wanting to also keep generational wealth in mind in the home, we don't want to allow so much loan funding that creates generational debt. Because of course in the Black and brown community, you have a couple of ways to obtain your wealth, which is your business and your home. So it's being of two minds, right, and two sides of the same coin. So I'll share that example with you. Another example would be that there's sometimes some asset limitation thresholds on certain pots of money, right? So, is that a true regulatory consideration that we should have for this pot of money? And maybe some time ago, 50 years ago, it looked like it was a blanket policy, but actually it's not. So in which places can we remove regulations and requirements like that to open up and access opportunity with the mindset that we already have competency in understanding the socio-economic political occurrences that have happened that allow for, let's just say, a white household to take, 7 years to save 20% down, and it takes a Black and brown household, I think, 24 and 26 years. So from that perspective, are we willing to change a requirement that relates to savings? What kind of savings in it is it? And it's harder and it's a slower pace to have those conversations and really hash out those details, but we're willing to do it. And that's something that we're actively going through at this time. On another end, it would take somebody understanding, like, what is the credit score impact and what does that look like in the Black and brown community, understanding that there is such thing. What are the social phenomenons that have occurred that have allowed certain people to be in the predicament and dilemmas that they're in. So for example, there's a big thing, let's just say, and I'm going to throw some examples, in the Black community, children who are kind of not really given a very good head start to begin with because growing up, their parents actually put a lot of things in their name. So when they find out later in life that, oh my gosh, my credit is not very good because my parents just had to make a way and they had no other choice. That looks different depending on where you're from and the resources and things like that you have. So what does that mean? I say all that to say, what does that mean? That might mean that for, let's say, in the lending space, do Black and brown communities need a manual underwriting process? So they don't put in their information to qualify for a loan and then they're spit out a denial based on what that score indicates and that risk. But they need a human being to look at what is on their credit report. So let's just say Black and brown men, they pay child support. Can we look at that differently? Can we work with friend of the court? Can we work with systems and institutions to figure out how it is that we should look at this kind of debt, student loan debt? Black women, for example, are achieving really, really high rates in higher education. So they might not be, let's say, for example, they're not paid as high as their white counterparts, and then they can't achieve home ownership because in the lending space, student loans are looked at a little bit differently. So they might be kind of screwed twice. So again, it takes kind of an understanding of all of these broad issues within the communities and how that affects somebody's qualifications so that we can mitigate this disparate income and this disparate impact, that occurs within our communities. We have all of this. This is all exacerbated by Oakland County now is a welcoming community. So what do these things mean for the refugee and immigrant communities? You're going to have a lot of the NIMBYism and things of that nature, things that we've already discussed, so I won't go into it again. But yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, really. Amen. Go ahead, Jill. Did you want to go, Jill?
No, I just said amen.
Okay. We had another question over here.
Hi there. I just wanted to say that I appreciate the conversation today, and I think it's interesting learning some of the sort of end gap reduction. I'm just wondering if there isn't a way to even focus on the front end. I'm not a builder, I'm not a developer, but as an architect, I see the cost of construction and the availability of trades being so diminished right now that even if we waved a crystal ball right now and said, we're going to remove all of the structures that exist that are in your way to develop, and okay, we're going to develop everywhere Oakland County. We don't even have the people to develop. So my question is shouldn't we be focusing also on the schools and potentially not focusing all on college education, but even looking at skilled trades as being a great place to start, or maybe even a point to jump from to help even the lower income issues. I mean, these are high-paid jobs. We need lots of them everywhere in Michigan, everywhere in the U.S. Couldn't that be a focus of some of the funding we're talking about as opposed to just the end gap?
Yeah, go ahead, Lee.
I think that's a great question and something near and dear to us at UWM for a couple of reasons. I think one is you're spot on, right? I mean, if you did wave the wand, there are not enough electricians, there are not enough carpenters, and I can speak from our perspective as a large company. One of the things I love about UWM is that we, you can succeed at our company whether you have a college degree or not. I mean, that's one of the things. It's one of the ideals that Matt Ishby has instilled into our culture from day one, and it's evidenced by. We have plenty of entry-level jobs that start at $15 an hour, and we have plenty of people that don't have a college degree that have ascended into management and are making very good livings. We've taught them how to be an underwriter. They're making, in many cases, six figures or multiple six figures depending on the year and the overtime and the demand and where rates are. But we're an example of right now we're trying to hire. And we've got walk-up interviews every Thursday, and we've had job fairs, and we're one of the few companies that is, again, hiring en masse, and we can't find people. And so we're actually reaching out now to all the superintendents in Oakland County to get to the high schools to say, hey, we know, I mean, we've talked about some of the other issues of student debt, and college might not be for everyone or not be for everyone right away. So easier for us to do it as a 6,000-person company, but, trade schools and, some of these other opportunities to one, get people jobs. Two, help them along in their career. Make that they can avoid debt and student loans, and they can contribute to this problem of a lack of housing supply in Oakland County. I mean, there's sort of a multifaceted approach here. So I love the idea of working maybe publicly and privately on getting more word out and getting more awareness out at the junior colleges and at the high school level to say, hey, there's great careers for you if you want to go, and you don't have to necessarily go on the college path right now. The other thing I want to add, just because I don't know if I was going to get this question, it's totally different, but we got the 5-minute warning. If anyone needs to use the restroom, 5 more minutes. The other thing that I just wanted to bring this up. So there are some new technologies out there building-wise that also help this, and it's 3D printed homes, and it's not quite ready yet for mainstream, but we're starting to see some successful cases, and it is kind of the gap between a manufactured home and a traditional stick-built home, where these homes and this technology, it's 3D printed homes, when they're built, the hypothesis is that they'll be able to be built 30 to 40% faster. So built in 60% of the time, so get to market faster. Also, 30 to 40% less cost because you're pouring double walls with concrete. You're not stick building, and you don't need framers and those sorts of things. And then cost to insure is very low for the owners because they're essentially fireproof and floodproof. And the utility costs are lower because they're naturally better insulated. So again, there's burgeoning technologies out there, but I would also love to see a place like Pontiac work together, public, private, builders, architects, and let's pick a street and let's do 10 of them, and let's see if at scale we can do 10 3D printed homes and we can finance them, and are they really cheaper, faster, more affordable? It's stuff like that too. Sometimes taking a chance.
Sure, I've seen that in Detroit. Go ahead, Monique. We remember 4 minutes now.
Yeah. You know what? I just wanted to say thank you for bringing that up. Great point. There was quite some time ago, and somebody mentioned this group. I'm sorry, I don't know who you are out there, but somebody mentioned the Committee of 50. It was quite some time ago that I had the pleasure of joining a group of ambitious leaders in the city of Pontiac, and what they were saying is, hey, you know what? Pontiac is always talked about. You're always seeing us in the news, but for the wrong reasons, and we actually have a lot of emerging resources and programs, right? And so how do we share with other people and glorify the wealth that we have here? One of those programs was I don't know the name of it, but it was getting into the schools and getting the children connected with the trades and making sure that they were offering different kind of roles and skill sets and abilities. And at the time, again, I don't know what it was called, but there was really an effort to offer Pontiac students or in the surrounding areas internships, which we're used to, at least in my assumption as well, is that many of those things are very low paid or not paid at all, but an effort to get Pontiac students into the trades was to offer them a very good rate of pay at the same time as they're being educated in this space. And at one point I heard that there was a really good effort to tap into the high school students that are around this area. But then I think even more recently, there's been an effort to catch them earlier, 7th, 8th graders and things like that, to really capitalize and tap into the resources. But also what I would say too is I would challenge, and I know sometimes we can only do so much, and we can look at adjusting and modifying certain things that we don't have to adhere to as much versus what are we kind of confined to. And what I would challenge people as employers is to understand maybe the context of trying to serve certain communities who have also been historically over-policed. And so what does that look like of the people that are trying to obtain jobs, and what's on their record? Are they willing to say this person deserves a second chance? This person deserves this opportunity. These are the things that are on their record. Am I statutorily and regulatory wise, whatever, it's a word for now, must I tell them no and good luck, and we wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors? Or are there things that I can look at differently in order to really, really build the bridge of historically disinvested communities and what it is that the economic opportunities that they have within their reach? How can I assist in closing that space?
Anybody feel compelled?
I just want to say yes. The answer, 100%. But statewide, we have to change the narrative about the value of these positions, right? As children of baby boomers, we were drilled into getting a 4-year degree and beyond, because our parents lived the life they lived. So we have to we need a Pure Michigan campaign that is driven toward demonstrating the value of skilled trade positions and other positions at that level. We have to change the culture because we need them desperately.
Yeah, that was my first instinct. Yes, the answer is yes. Okay, anybody else? We're good? Well, listen, thank you all very much for coming out. It was a fascinating day, learned a lot, and please give a hand for our panelists, and thank you for coming. Have a good day.